Sustainability, green and clean, ecosystem, environmental impact, plastic, fantastic, impact, carbon, CO2, 3, 4, 5. I don't understand anything, but here are the professionals to explain us more.
Festivals and sustainability, as festivals is trying to encourage consumption, while current sustainability principles would suggest the minimization of consuming. So the question regarding festivals is always that how can we minimize the negative impact? And a festival that never became such sustainable as having a walk in the forest or doing some, ecotourism. Festivals always have a huge impact on their environment, and that what makes a festival becoming green or trying to become sustainable is when the organizers putting efforts into minimizing the negative impact.
Another thing that we would recommend is to look at what can actually save money as well, because often it's seen that to be green you need to spend more money, whereas actually being efficient is being greener as well. So there are some cases where you could potentially save money by having a sustainability strategy. For example, with generator power, if the generators are inefficient, then you'll be spending more money on higher transport and fuel. Whereas if you can make them more efficient by correctly specifying how much power is needed, for instance, then you could save money off the bottom line. So that would be something to make a start with as well, as it's quite a motivator for the team.
In the last few years, there was this huge movement, it's a European or global movement to come over of the problem of single-use plastic. And in the last years, many festivals had made clear statements on terminating the usage of single-use plastic. And now, due to the pandemic, we are quite afraid we already see the signs of that these single-use plastics might come back, because some might say that single-use is more hygienic than if you can wash something.
At a Greener Festival, we look across a number of different sections when we assess festivals so that we can certify them as sustainable. And in the beginning, it was very much focused on the environmental elements, but more and more over the years, the social impacts have really taken a prominence as well. Because they go hand in hand, and you can't really have one without the other if you want to be sustainable.
Somehow is the hard cup system that has become such like the first thing to do. As long as you are selling single-use plastic in huge volumes, your festival could never be considered as a festival that is making steps forward.
What are the impacts on the ground, physically on the earth that's there, with the local water, noise, etc. And then we also look at what is the connection with the local community. So is it something that involves the local community or that supports and works with the local community rather than being imposed on them? And then we look at the more global impacts. So in that respect, we'd look at travel and transport. The travel and transport, we generally break it down into three sections. So we've got the audience transport, which for many greenfield sites is a huge impact. And then we have production transport, so all of the infrastructure that comes in for the build, both site and technical production. And then we look at the artist transport as well. Within that, we also include the actual staff, which usually gets connected with the production transport. So everything that means travelling to and from the event space, essentially. Then we have the power. The power, whether that's being provided from the national grid or by generators or some form of renewable energy, we look at how the event is actually powered. And then we look at at the procurements, so what's actually being bought into the festival, what kind of materials are being used for decor or for site infrastructure, and also within this, which is a really big factor, is the food. Where is the food coming from? Is it locally sourced, seasonal, being kind of grown with ethical standards?
When we had the last financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, those companies which were supporting or sponsoring the green efforts of the festivals were facing with challenges, and they had to cut their expenditure. And when they cut expenditure, the first thing they cut was the sustainable efforts.
Then we have the waste management, and we often refer to it as how circular is the festival now. We've always approached it with what we call the waste hierarchy in the past, which is where you have at the very top is avoiding producing the waste in the first place. That's like the pinnacle. And then that comes next to reusing, recycling, other disposal, which could be, for instance, getting energy from waste or energy from anaerobic digestion or composters. And then the very bottom rung is really inefficient incineration or fly tipping or landfills, etc.
And because we had this bad experience that time, I was already concerned that this time it would happen again. That when a financial crisis will arrive, then the companies will just not willing to support green efforts anymore.
But also on a governmental level, there's probably over the last 5 years, maybe more, there's been a lot of interest from national governments, from the EU and from the UN.
I still believe in the power of stage production, and I think that has such a tradition that cannot be just changed even by this pandemic either. And I think a good festival will always deliver great stage production.
So as far as the appetite for sustainability, I think that it's definitely become stronger over the years.
So probably in this 10 years, the importance of green efforts has increased to such level where no one will question that anymore.